Good evening and welcome to the July 23rd, 2020 school committee meeting. It is 7:04. I'm calling this meeting to order. Pursuant to the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Paragraph 20, as well as the Select Board's emergency order dated March 16, 2020, the Holliston School Committee will be using remote participation for this meeting. The audio of this meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the HCAT webpage within 24 hours in accordance with the governor's emergency action requirement of keeping the public informed of actions during this meeting. I ask that all participants remotely attending please state your name for identification purposes each time you speak throughout the meeting. At this time, I will take a roll call. Mrs. Listevnik.
Present.
Ms. Koshin.
Present.
Ms. Savard.
Sorry, present.
Sorry, you're in the line there. Ms. Naborski.
Present.
Mr. Morton.
Present.
Ms. Hanstead.
Present.
Mrs. Raffi, present. At this time, I will accept a motion to approve virtual meeting participation.
Moved by Dawn.
Seconded by Lisa.
Moved by Dawn, seconded by Lisa. All in favor. Mrs. Listevnik.
Yes.
Ms. Koshin.
Yes.
Ms. Savard.
Yes.
Ms. Naborski.
Yes.
Mr. Morton.
Yes.
Ms. Hanstead.
Yes.
Mrs. Raffi. Yes, thank you. Okay, good evening all. Great to see you all. Let's jump right in. We have our meeting minutes to approve. The first set, June 18th, regular session. Are there any questions, comments, edits that need to be made?
I sent one to Lisa.
Grammatical
Just
one.
about a name of somebody named Sadi. I think her name is Sadi. She just didn't have the person's first name, so I just put it in there. From Diverse Holliston. Yes. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing her name correctly, but I just found it and sent it to Lisa.
Great, thank you. Any other changes? Is there a motion to approve the June 18th regular session as amended this evening?
Ooh, you sound like you're underwater, Stacy, but yes, I will move by Lisa.
Second by Dawn.
Moved by Lisa, seconded by Dawn. Wow. Roll call vote, Mrs. Listevnik,
Yes.
Ms. Koshin,
Yes.
Ms. Savard,
Abstain. I wasn't there.
Ms. Naborski,
Yes.
Mr. Morton,
Yes.
Ms. Hanstead,
Yes.
Mrs. Raffi, yes. Okay. June 30th executive session minutes. Are there any questions, comments, edits? Is there a motion to approve the June 30th executive session minutes, which we will release?
Moved
Moved
by
by Dawn.
Seconded by Catherine.
Moved by Dawn, seconded by Catherine. All in favor, Mrs. Listevnik.
Yes.
Ms. Koshin,
Yes.
Ms. Savard,
Yes.
Ms. Naborski,
Yes.
Ms. Hanstead,
Yes.
Mrs. Raffi, yes. July 2nd executive session. Are there any questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve the July 2nd executive session minutes for which we will release?
Moved by Andy.
Seconded by Catherine.
Louise.
Moved by Andy, seconded by Anne Louise. All in favor, Mrs. Listevnik,
Yes.
Koshin,
Yes.
Ms. Savard,
Yes.
Ms. Naborski,
Yes.
Mr. Morton.
Yes, and you missed me on the last one, so yes on that one
Oh,
also.
I'm sorry. Oh,
Okay.
sorry. Mr. Morton and said yes. Ms. Hanstead,
Yeah, oh, sorry, yes.
Mrs. Raffi, yes. Okay, great. Oral communication. Mrs. Listevnik, do you have anything to share this evening?
I do, but I think you wanted me to talk about it in another section about the MASC meeting.
Yeah, you can talk
Yeah,
about
I'll
that.
share about that after.
Okay. Lisa?
I don't know which MASC meeting you're talking about. I was just in the one on reopening just now. Yeah, me too. I was just I wanted to share a couple of highlights, and we can go back to this when we're talking about COVID, but I thought it was really interesting that a few districts mentioned that they're not even considering 3 feet as a minimum. They're looking at 6 feet only as a minimum in their plans. But I can go into more detail. It was an interesting meeting. There were 262 participants, and we did breakout rooms. But
We were all in different breakout rooms, so
yeah,
you heard different things. We each heard different things. So
yeah. So, but I guess we can save that till the update on reopening, if that's okay.
Great. Catherine?
I don't have anything.
Dawn?
Same as Lisa, I was in the MASC district reopening plan meeting, and I'll just wait until we get to that section. Thanks.
Andy?
None this week, thanks.
Anne Louise?
I won't talk about that since the others are going to bring that up. But I did just want to share that our seniors will indeed finally be graduating and receiving their diplomas on Saturday. So that's pretty exciting. And I want to thank Principal Bottomley and the entire administration and staff that were involved in planning this, and also Chief Cassidy and Chief Stone and his entire police force for helping out in advance, because I know it's going to be a lot. So thank you to all for that planning. And in advance, I want to congratulate all of our seniors who have patiently awaited for this time, and very proud of you. You didn't have a crystal ball, but you were willing to take the risk. And it's just great that you're going to be able to walk across the podium. So to the parents and guardians, if you did not receive or see in your email, there was an email from Ms. Bottomley explaining all the logistics along with a 10-minute video. I haven't had 5 minutes, but I'm going to post it on the parent Facebook page tonight. So that'll be great. Anyone else in town who is interested in watching it will be broadcast live on Facebook Live and on HCAT, and so it'll make for a good morning. Get brunch and sit down in your living room and watch. And that's it.
Thank you. I too echo Anne Louise's sentiments, so I will not repeat the same thing, but congratulations to all. Thank you to all who attended town meeting this past Monday. The town has a budget to work with, and the omnibus budget passed, so thank you and congratulations to all. And with that, yeah.
Are we going to do committee updates, subcommittee? Because I was going to talk to that just for a few seconds, but I didn't think this was the moment for it. So
I do have, yeah, you can talk about the budget a little later.
yeah, great.
I'll be just separate.
Okay.
With that, we're going to move to central office. Susan?
So as you can imagine, we have been working fast and furiously trying to get a draft plan of the reopening for the fall into place. So I was hoping to that would be most of my update tonight, if you would like to hear about that right now.
We'll save you for after we do the policy.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Is fine, sure.
Peter?
Yeah, I just want to wish our seniors and their families well this weekend, and thank the high school administration for all their work on that. Also want to recognize our administrators and staff and teachers and parent volunteers who are working hard. I'm still getting texts at 2 a.m. from administrators throughout the district, which is not a good thing, but it shows the commitment they have to be creative and do the very best in these challenging times. So again, I thank them for their work.
Keith, do you have anything?
It's just extending off Ann Louise's thing about graduation. You know, within that note, it does explicitly remind everyone that it's for each graduate, there's 2 people that they can have come with them, 2 family members or whatever, and that you can't stand outside the fence or anything of that nature. It's really an exclusive event, unfortunately, this year. So, you know, to go with Ann Louise's motto a little bit there, grab some breakfast and sit down, kind of like instead of breakfast at Wimbledon this year, it'll be breakfast in Holliston. So
That's right. Air conditioning at home. It'll be much more pleasant.
Great, thank you. All right, we're going to jump right into policy. So we have our second reading of policy JBD, gender identity. I'm going to turn this over to Cynthia.
Thanks. So our policy gender identity support, I did make a couple little changes. I do have to read it through its entirety as well, but hopefully you had a chance to see just there's a couple of edits that I made. And then I also, we had some feedback from Joan too that she had sent and I incorporated that in here. So, okay, I'll try to read quickly. The Holliston Public Schools strives to provide a safe, respectful, and supportive learning and working environment for all students and staff. Students who identify as gender nonconforming and/or transgender are entitled to have access to restrooms, locker rooms, and changing facilities that are sanitary, safe, and adequate so that they may comfortably and fully engage in their school program and activities. Transgender, gender nonconforming students, staff who are uncomfortable using a gender segregated restroom will be provided with a safe and adequate alternative. A component of the student support strategy may include names changes and gender identity markers used in communication with and about the student and in written communication with the parent/guardians. HPS will not require legal documentation to change the student's name or gender. HPS will work in collaboration with the student and parents/guardians to discuss any disclosures regarding changes in name and/or gender identity markers. Gender segregated activities should be avoided. However, whenever students are separated by gender in school activities, students must be permitted to participate in such activities or conform to such rule, policy, or practice consistent with their gender identity. To further a safe and supportive school environment for all students and staff, HPS incorporates education and training about transgender and gender nonconforming students into their anti-bullying curriculum, student leadership trainings, and staff professional development. Does anybody have any questions, comments, edits, changes, etc.? Catherine.
I was just wondering if there's anyone, if we've taken this to anyone who is experiencing this or has experience in this, that is that could speak to some of the dog whistle words that we might not be hearing or seeing.
Yes, actually, when we were developing the policy, we invited a parent a local parent from the community who has a student in our schools that is transgender, and also a staff member to review over this document, as well as representatives from the Boston chapter of GLAAD. So we did actually get all that input from them, and they helped us to formulate this as it is.
Awesome.
Anybody else? Okay, I'd like to move that we waive the third reading so that we can adopt this policy tonight, if that's okay with everyone else.
Yes, so school committee policy allows us to adopt a new policy, and we can waive the third reading according to our policy. So moved by Cynthia.
Second by Dawn.
Seconded by Dawn. All in favor. Mrs. Listevnik.
Yes.
Ms. Koshin.
Yes.
Ms. Savard.
Yes.
Ms. Naborski.
Yes.
Mr. Morton.
Yes.
Ms. Hanstead.
Yes.
Mrs. Raffi. Yes. Congratulations,
Fantastic.
Mrs. Listevnik. We have gender identity support policy JBD. Excellent.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for all your work on it, everybody, and Dawn, especially for getting it started. Thank you. Oh,
Excellent.
can I just add one more thing
Sure.
about just policy-wise? Because of all of what's happening in the beginning of the school year with all the we're going to have a lot of COVID-related policies and guidance that's going to be coming out from MASC next week. So there's going to be a whole like suite of policies. So just get prepared for that, everyone. So that's it. Thank
Great,
you.
thank you. Okay, for old business, we're going to talk about FY21 budget. Anne Louise, before you talk about town meeting, I actually have asked Mr. Boudet to give an update to the community about the hardship fund for kindergarten tuition.
Thanks, Stacy. We ended up having 84 people request a refund. It totaled $50,016. I figured I didn't want to go under, so I went 16 cents over. I apologize. I did that without your approval, so I hope you can let me slide with that budget subcommittee. We were able to, in that process of giving $50,000 for the hardship fund, we were able to offset $8,000 actually worth of previous debt from people who hadn't paid their bills up. It still leaves us a little over $13,000 that is still owed to the program. Those bills are going to go out with the checks, which should be, they're on the warrant that Stacy has already signed. She's going to report on you a little later. The town should hopefully approve it on Monday. Checks should go out then the following Wednesday. So the checks will be in people's hands either sometime between Thursday and Friday of next week. If the town does not vote, if the select board does not approve the warrant this week, it would be the following week. So within the next week to 2 weeks, the checks will be received in the home. So any questions? Okay.
What was the average return? What was the return then?
I'm sorry, it was $595.24.
Keith, can you say that number again? Sorry, I missed it.
$595.24.
Great. Thank you to you and your entire crew who want to really name nameless for the manual labor on getting those checks out, but greatly appreciated. Thank you for that.
And how many people
while trying to close the books as well. So just, again, the timing of it was not the best for us, but we're getting through it. So
Right.
84, Lisa.
84.
Anne Louise?
Are we going to do budget? Is that what?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody who attended or participated by watching town meeting for doing that, because it was I think it was a hard night for a lot of people to make that choice, either come or not come. And I just want to also thank again Chief Cassidy and everyone involved in planning town meeting, because it was extremely well run, and it was very, all the seating, everything was perfect. So thank you. Among a lot of other stuff that was discussed that night, I am pleased to report the town meeting approved the school budget, the operating budget for FY21, which the school committee had voted earlier this spring. And just by way of background, after a lot of back and forth, we significantly reduced our budget request of the town by, nearly $1 million to try to bring it more in line with the current economic environment. And so what we received was $35,139,715, which represents a level service budget vis-a-vis last year. So in other words, we are not adding programs, adding staff. We are keeping the lights on. The good news is we're not cutting anybody right now either. We're going to be able to do this with hopefully everybody who's on the roster. Full transparency, level service budgets still have usually a built-in nominal increase because certain costs go up, contractual obligations, et cetera, that are unavoidable. and that amounts to about a 0.55% increase over the prior years. So it's very small. I want to especially thank the Finance Committee and our Finance Committee liaisons for their incredible collaboration and support over these many months. We have been meeting weekly, and with their guidance and input, we've been able to achieve this very important milestone. I don't know many districts, if any, actually, who are in this shape. And it's good. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that town meeting also approved our capital request, which I'm going to name some of the key items in that. I think everybody on all of the athletic teams that play out on committee and field will be delighted to hear the town meeting approved the investment of $500,000 to totally renovate committee and field. It is long overdue. The field is past its warranty, past its expected life. We are maintaining it. There is nothing unsafe about it today, but the collective assessment, including from two of our former selectmen, one of whom is sort of actively involved with a number of the youth sports teams that play on it, is that that field does really need to be replaced. And importantly, the capital funds that are going toward this are in a separate fund that by law cannot be used for anything but capital. So they are set aside for projects just like this. And this is something that's been on the radar for quite some time. In addition to that, we are going to be able to repair some of the sections on the Miller roof that are in need of repair. Town meeting approved another $125,000 for that. And then finally, $122,214 for some additional technology infrastructure items that will serve us well as we move into reopening. So I think those are sort of the headlines on the capital investment. So again, thank you to our budget subcommittee that worked really hard on this, Lisa Cushion and Andy Morton. Thank you to this whole committee and everybody who was there last night. It's really a big, huge support for the schools. So thank you.
And can I jump in just really quickly and say thank you most of all to Keith and Ann Louise.
Oh my God.
Who ended up doing
hero. He's the hero on this.
Yeah, you guys both have done a ton of work on this. Thank you.
Keith, I'm sorry. I should have said that. I'm sorry.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Okay, we are going to jump right into new business with the first topic of reopening of school planning. I would like to give the floor to Dr. Kufka first, and then the school committee can share their information from the MASC webinar.
Sure, good evening. And as you can imagine, we've been fast and furiously trying to get a draft plan in place and making progress towards that. As many of you know, there have been school-based voluntary work groups in place for a number of weeks, and they've been helping to gather data to help inform decisions at the district level that will help the schools to actually narrow down the plans that they'll be moving forward with within that larger decision. We had started our district subcommittee meetings. As you know, I'd sent out some information asking for a parent rep and a teacher rep for each of our 5 subcommittees. So those have been in place for just the 2 weeks, but we've had a lot of meetings already, a lot of really strong efforts to start to get a draft plan in writing. And I'm really appreciative to the amount of the yeoman's work that all of the administrators at the school and district level have put into this effort, because we know how crucial it is to get as much information out to parents as possible. The other piece to this is we have continually had to revise our planning as we've moved along day by day. As recently as last night at 10 p.m., I received the guidance on transportation and facilities, which I'll let Keith speak to in a minute if he wants to share just a few nuggets of information on a little bit later. But every time we start to think we're moving to a somewhat consensus of where we're going to be able to draft the plans and really try to cement them, these guidances keep getting released slowly and more slowly, but then the more they come out, it's really changes the direction. And you'll find if you speak to, and I think Lisa may have alluded to this already with the mask conversation, we are hearing daily in our meetings from other surrounding communities, at all communities at the state level, districts that have done tons of work and thought that they had a plan in place are now revising continually their plans. So what I think what's best for parents and for the district is to not give false information out. I worry about sometimes when we release information that's really not, we think we can do something, but then the guidance has changed our ability to do so. And then I'd hate to put options into parents' minds that really are not viable and that we're going to undo 2 days later because we received another guidance. So it is, as much as we've been really striving to cement that plan, and we should have some really strong direction on that very shortly, I don't think it's prudent to give parents a false sense of hope of something that is not even an option that we can consider at this time. And there's many reasons for that. Tomorrow, the 5 subcommittees will be meeting for the first time as a whole committee, which I think there's about, if everybody's able to make it, about 35 or more of us in that group. I'll have each of the facilitators of our 5 subcommittees share out summaries of where they are in the thinking process about what's feasible based on the information that they gathered and what they're going to recommend to us to be considering as we start to fine tune and draft the plan and put it in and cement it into writing. But even as we do that, and the more I'm able to share on that, I will tell you it's subject to change even up to the August 10th date, which we will have. We are required to have a plan that is to be submitted fully, the full plan, to DESE and out to the community. And that plan will be our best efforts as of August 10th to cement a plan in place. But we know that plan will be fluid throughout the year. So I think it's important that we really have to rely on additional safety guidance that's coming out and additional information from DESE. And it's going to move us in certain directions. But at least I think by that point, parents will have a pretty solid idea of what we feel we're able to, what's feasible to provide for our students in a safe manner. The survey that I did send out to parents recently, we have those results. We did have to add another layer. We had not had all of the incoming kindergarten students in the original contacts in our messaging device. So we had to go back and send that out just to make sure that they had their input as well. So those survey results are being calculated, and I should be able to share those out either tomorrow or Monday. And it was a brief survey. It's just going to be a snapshot in time of what parents indicated on that survey in graph form. But with that, there's going to be a part 2 survey, as we indicated to parents, that will start to ask a little bit more about their interest in, if we had certain hybrid models in place, what they would prefer for a hybrid model. So we can, even though we think we know what direction we have to go, we still want to get as much input into that before we finalize any decisions on that. And the same with staff. We wanted to make sure we got a staff survey out, which we did last week as well. We have those survey results, and we will be putting those together again in graph form and a brief summary to share out with staff. Again, all of our efforts are to be as transparent as possible. We don't have anything to hide. These are just, we're not going to be sharing anything confidential. If there's any names or confidential information, they will not be shared. But there's no reason we can't share percentages of what people are thinking of what they're leaning to for the fall as a parent or as a staff member. So it's important that we have that information. And with that, we will be sending a brief survey to staff to ask some other detailed questions. Now, yesterday, there was the commissioner's update on July 22nd, and I know Dr. Patello attended this as well. Again, every time we meet, there's more and more information and coming out in little bits and pieces, but again, it really informs district directions and can sometimes change our direction. And one of the things that at the state level and the local level that we're being encouraged to think of is, we know that our staff, who are parents who have young children in the district or in other districts, are going to struggle to, how are they going to be able to be effective at their teaching jobs if there are blended models, hybrid models, or remote learning models at their school district that their children go to, or many of our staff that have children in our district. So the survey that I'm going to be sending out to staff will be asking specific to that information. We are going to do our best to try to incorporate that in our planning. Is there something more we can offer to staff for their own students that are in Holliston Public Schools. And if we can offer more to help them with their childcare concerns, we're going to try to embed that in the model as well. And that's why it's important to keep getting these snapshots in time to gather as much information as possible. I also wanted to just mention that we are, as we roll this timeline out and it's moving very quickly, we do want to also, as we start to tease down drill down into the specifics of the plan and the models that we're going to put into writing, we want to make sure that we have a question and answer night for parents and also a question and answer night for staff. And we'd like to do that in the week of August 3rd because we feel like by then we have to put a basic plan into place for DESE on July 31st. But that is very just what we are leaning towards in our planning. It's not a very specific plan. So we felt like if we have our somewhat of a draft in place for our meetings with parents and staff on August 3rd and 4th, and can ask input to them at that night as well, that will help us tease out some of the things that we want to put into the draft, which we will have to present to school committee. We would want your input on August 6th at that meeting. And on August 10th, would give us a little time before August 10th, before we have to submit that plan, the fully developed plan to DESE and also out to our families and community members. So those nights are going to be coming before you know it. As the admin team will be trying to draft as much of this information at our retreat next week. We're not going to get it all done, but at least we can get a lot of the resources. We're trying to embed some of the information from the DESE guidance into different portions of that. And we'll have our retreat next week on 7, 28, and 29. One of the things I probably could have mentioned earlier when you asked me for any updates that is part of our reopening thinking, but also I think exciting news that we're trying to really embed some work on, even though we're spending so much of our time right now and countless hours. I feel so badly that our administrative team have not had any time to take vacations. And even if they've had a day or two off, they have not been off. They're still on Zoom meetings, weekends, nights, all, as Dr. Patello mentioned. I mean, everybody is working yeoman's hours, and it's just, it's just going to be one of those summers, unfortunately. And I hope at some point we can settle into allowing some work-life balance for our administrative team, because I do worry about that burnout factor, but I do appreciate the efforts that they've been putting in. And because I want to be embedding some of the work on social justice and equity that we've talked about in previous discussions, I did invite a guest speaker, a former colleague of mine who is a friend as well. And she's going to come in and just lead a brief discussion of how we could embed some work on equity, social justice, and anti-racism efforts, just as a small snapshot in our retreat, and give us some guiding thinking about how we could embed some of this work, because this work is also something that needs to take place because equity is embedded in the work we're doing for the reopening. And also we know that all of the work all the things that have been happening outside in society related to the protests are also in the front of center of students. And there is going to be a lot of trauma that I've spoken to before. So even though we can't make that the focus of our retreat, and I'd like to do more work on that, I am inviting this speaker to come in, and I would like school committee to feel welcome to come for 45 minutes of her discussion on Tuesday. I think it's at 12:30, but I will be sending an invitation. No pressure to have you come, but I just thought it would be nice for you to see what we're trying to at least embed in the work as we embed that as well in our reopening plans. But as we finalize all of this work and try to get this narrowed down to give correct information to parents, not misinformation. I think it's, as I mentioned, it's really critical that they have more accurate thinking before they start planning things that we can't offer. The goal is obviously to get students back as safely and in person as much as possible. We are striving to get to that direction. I will say though, even though we've had guidance, and I think Lisa just said a little while ago, the 3-foot option was put out to us as superintendents that would be a minimal possibility to bring students back. However, every guidance we've received since then and every medical document, including a parabola meeting that I attended last night, and that document will be shared to the public tomorrow. I know they're going to be sharing out their work. It's very detailed. I can't say that I've read it all, but everything we're hearing only discusses what to do in the event of a 6-foot incident or 6-foot social distancing. So if they're only referencing 6 foot as a district, we do not feel comfortable with that 3-foot model. And I think you're going to find, and that's why I'm saying that people were putting out full in person at 3 feet. I have recently not heard anyone considering 3 feet. I'm not saying there might be a few out there that still, but in the discussions I've had, We have not, as of recent dates, people have moved completely away from that for good reason, because we were going to try to make it work. We could bring many of our students back in a 3-foot model, but it really is not safe and it's not feasible. We're hearing that pre-K to up to 10 years old, they're saying students tend to be more safe with the coronavirus. Over that age, things start to change and look more like adults, and how they could potentially be exposed to that. That being said, the 6-foot model is really the discussion point that we need to have at the district level, and will be definitely embedded in the work that we're revising and planning as we move forward. And just trying to think if there's anything else. One other piece with that, while it's not specific to just fall reopening, but I know parents are very anxious about fall sports, wanting students to have extracurricular, all the things that we would like to be jumping back into as well. But we're hearing at the college level that most sports have been canceled for the fall. Right now, MIAA just, I think it was yesterday or the day before, did say that they are not considering opening sports until 9/14. And although I'm not, I can't say what's going to be the final outcome, I am cautiously thinking that we may not see sports opening on September 14th, just based on all the guidance we're getting. But I think right now it's the best guess that they're giving us, but I think we have to be realistic that may not be likely as well. But with all of this in mind, we're moving as fast as we can, and we'll have much more information for you on the August 6th meeting, and a proposal that might require some adjustments to the school year calendar. One of the things that we're optimistic about, based on our discussions with the commissioner and just some flexibility we may have on the school calendar and scheduling, we are pretty optimistic that we're going to be able to front load some additional training days for staff, which is going to be critical and crucial. And that will require that when I come to the August 6th meeting, we'll be putting forth potential school calendar changes that would shift the dates a little bit for the start date, but not necessarily the start date for staff. So that will be probably will be at the August 6th meeting as well. And I think that's probably enough information for me to give right now. Happy to answer any questions. And I also, if you have, I'm sure Keith could give us updates. I know he didn't get to digest all of the pages of the documents that we got at 10 o'clock last night, but we did talk about this as well in our discussion today.
Andy, then Don.
Thank you. And I'm looking forward to hearing more on August 6th. The question, or actually what I would hope you could include in there is, can you speak specifically on August 6th to what school start times are going to look like? I know there's a lot of concern where we had made a vote at this point, it seems like a decade ago, to change school start times, and a lot's changed since then, just to see if that's feasible, viable, and how that's going to fit into whatever plan we're looking to move forward with.
As of where we are right now in the planning, we have not discussed a change in school start times except for what's already been voted on. So the times that are in place based on school committee, you had 2 votes on that, those times will be our expectation for the fall.
Perfect.
The only reason that would change is if we are changing minutes to days, and that would be a much more in-depth plan. But as of now, we have not discussed the start time changing.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Dawn?
I have a few concerns. We have a meeting right now, and what we don't have before us is the plans. And I understand that July 31st is a date to submit a non-binding preliminary plan. In fact, with this MASC district reopening plan seminar, they talked about just how limited that was, something like 400 words per each section that you're submitting. And again, it's non-binding, it can still be changed, but that deadline is July 31st. You had mentioned a parent forum on Monday, August 3rd and Tuesday, August 4th. I am reluctant to then come on Thursday, August 6th, and the same day that we're hearing the plan with specificity, have to vote on it. I think it would be important to have a discussion and give input and answer questions and possibly even make revisions before we're asked to vote on it that very same night. So to me, it would make sense if we had a parent forum on the 3rd and 4th, and then possibly had a meeting on Wednesday, August 5th and discussed it and discussed the input we received from parents and any changes we may be able to make, and then continued that discussion on Thursday, August 6th before we voted. Because I want to make sure that that we are fully involved in this. And if there are things that we would like to see change with it, I don't want to bring it to you on Thursday, August 6th on the same night that we're voting and not have the administration have the opportunity to circle and discuss.
Could I make a suggestion that you could think about as well in that? There are two thoughts that I have. One that maybe I think we'd be open to that for sure, but another option possibly could be, because I think on the 3rd and 4th, if we get input from staff and parents, that allows us to do some additional changes that we can do internally first. Potentially, we could discuss further on the 6th, and then if we had, what would that leave us, the 6th, 7th, 8th? Oh, it's the 10th of Monday. I was thinking the 10th was a Tuesday, and that would have had the 9th. So
Yeah.
I blew it. Sorry about that. I was one day off, so scratch that.
Tight time frame, but I would like an opportunity to discuss this for at least one night before the next night when we vote, so that if there are things that we think we need to reflect on or change, we have that time. So that was one of my concerns. I did want to, in terms of, we've heard about different hybrid models. One thing I've heard about in terms of whatever we implement, whatever plan, full, hybrid, remote, is ongoing reassessment of that and making sure that our plan has that built in, that we can reassess after a period of time. Is that something that you think that schools are talking about, that we're talking about, like a reassessment period?
Yes, any plan we're going to propose is going to have the flexibility to move within the continuum, because there's always that possibility that we could go full remote at any time in the year. And we know that's potentially a possibility. And also there's a potential that a hybrid model that we may put in place is not as viable, and we would want to tweak that. Anything we propose would be preferred to be short term, maybe first term, with the hope that we're going to continually move into less restrictive as we get more information. And obviously, as we all know, that the best case scenario is that the vaccine comes out, and that just takes some of the pressure off. We see some success with that, and that will allow us to get less restrictive and potentially move towards that 3-foot model. But I can just say that obviously we've said that the 6-foot model is where our team is feeling much more comfortable, because everybody's starting to say that. We've known that all along, but as more is released, it just seems only plausible that we can even think in that manner. But the priority that we're trying to do is make sure that pre-K to 12, there is an in-person model for students of all ages. It may not be the same for all ages, because there are different entry points and developmental needs of students, and we are trying to consider that. Just the data that we receive from remote learning, our younger learners, although remote learning can be challenging for many learners, our younger learners struggle even more with remote learning. So the more we can get our younger learners in person as much as possible is being prioritized in our planning thinking. But any hybrid model we're going to put forward is with the best intent to make sure we have a balance of in-person modeling for students and in-person instruction, as well as the remote learning for all ages.
All right. So, Lisa, I see your hand. Hold on one moment. Peter had raised his hand, so I just wanted, Peter, did you want to interject?
I think Susan spoke to it. I think part of the key to our creation of these models is thinking not only about how can we put forth the very best model for the opening of school, but how do we create models that have the flexibility to ideally bring more kids into in-person learning, but also adapt to going to more remote if necessary. And the pieces that, that entails is incredibly complex. And that's why, we want to make sure that whatever we put in place, we can see the future and how do we flex it. And part of that is that assessment piece that Dawn is talking about. If something is not working effectively and we have other possibilities, that we can move to because we built a model that has that flexibility, then we want to be able to take advantage of those. And so that's a part. We're really creating like 10 models. There's so many, as Dr. Kuska said, it's a continuum. And we're thinking about not only the 3 or 4 places on the continuum, but how can we flex beyond that? Because we want to be able to provide in this really extraordinary time the very best we can for kids. So I think you'll see that as we release information. I'm the one who's kind of holding us back in a lot of ways. I do not want to put us in a place where we don't have the flexibility to do absolutely everything we can do to provide the best experience we can for kids during this time. And so, some of the nuances and creativity are things that we're considering that not a lot of districts are. And if we released our plan 2 weeks ago, it would have changed completely. So that's where we're at, and we appreciate people's patience. But I think you'll appreciate it once we continue to piece things together. But we're still unpacking it as we go.
Lisa, Cynthia, Dawn, and Louise. Okay.
Okay. I wanted to, well, first, thank you, Susan, Keith, and Peter. I know there is more work going on into this than I could possibly imagine. And just every time you guys talk about this, I'm grateful that we have such a strong team. And I'm really happy to hear that we're already looking at the 6-foot distance as opposed to the 3-foot minimum. The one thing I wanted to ask about or advocate for is basically supporting Dawn in the sense that I am concerned because they really emphasized in this MASC meeting this evening that they said you better make sure you're on board with the plans that go in on August 10th because there will be policy and budget implications, and the community will hold us accountable. The school committee as well as all of central office. So to that end, I'm wondering if it would make sense to move up the public hearing or the teacher or whatever we're calling it, the ability for parents and teachers to provide input, if we should move that up to earlier in August. Because like Dawn, I definitely want to have some time to discuss this before we vote on it. And I'm also wondering if there's
Lisa, but respectfully, how can you go any earlier than August 3rd? August 1st is a Saturday.
Yeah, but we don't have to wait. I mean, we don't have to wait till July 31st to do. I know there's a submission on July 31st, but we don't have to wait till then. Do we?
Yeah, well, when are you proposing? Because the administrators have their retreat on Tuesday and Wednesday, the 28th and 29th.
Yeah, it's so tight.
Sorry, I'm
Wait, can I just
not trying to be.
Make sure I get that timeline again. So they're on the retreat the 28th and 9th. Okay, and then when is it? It's going to the state on the 10th. No.
Going on the 31st preliminary and then final on August 10th.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing we can do is meet on the 5th and the 6th. Meet on the 5th to discuss and then the 6th to vote. Yeah, that's going to be really rough and really tight. So, okay, that does bring me to my next point, though, which I was going to ask if we could get the work coming out of the subcommittees, as it comes out. I'm really regretting that we didn't think about putting school committee members on the various task forces or subcommittees or whatever we're calling them. And that's on us. I didn't ask for that. As far as I'm aware, no one asked for that. But now I'm realizing that it's going to be tough for us to process all the information that's coming in a way that allows us to make good decisions in time for a vote before August 10th. And I'm not casting blame on anyone.
No. So
whatsoever,
that's what
because
I
this is
was.
just such an unusual situation. But I'm wondering if we could figure out a way to get some kind of window onto the work that's going on with those 5 subcommittees so that we have more information coming in constantly so that we're not trying to make a decision in 2 days, bottom line. I don't want to be trying to make a decision this important in 24 hours.
All right, so let Susan answer that.
I am trying to wrap my head around this as well. And where I'd love to be able to say that as after the 29th, we would have a sufficient amount of information. I just don't want to mislead you if we don't get to where we think we are. That's my only hesitancy. It's not in any effort to not be transparent. I think by the end of the 29th, we could at least give you a sense of what the models are, because I feel we had a really good admin team meeting today that just made me feel like we're seeming to start moving in the direction that we're all, coming together with that thinking. We had a really good conversation today. So I feel like we're very close to being able to put those on. And I am optimistic that the 28th and 29th will bring us some good progress on that. It just may not be in a really great format. It's going to take, we'll be pulling stuff together. So I definitely think I could give you a summary of some sort about where we are at that point that might help you. It just may not be a very pretty document.
It doesn't need to be pretty. That's fair.
Susan, can you share with the committee your thinking on, we did have a conversation about having school committee on the different committees. Can you just share your thoughts on that, please?
Yeah, you did mention that. And I think I started to think of maybe I should do that and just kind of lost track of that. I don't think we would have been opposed to doing that. So because Stacy brought it up one day, and I think it just with the fast pace that I started moving and getting apparent, it just kind of got lost in the translation. So it certainly wasn't in a desire to keep you out of that thinking at all, because it certainly wouldn't have been. We have nothing to hide here, except that we want to make sure that we're giving accurate information and not false information out to families. So there certainly wasn't a desire to keep you out of that loop. And I do think tomorrow we'll have some summaries. I could probably get some summaries together from where we are with our discussions tomorrow, even if it was just in some bullet points. So I am happy to share that. I just don't want you to think you're going to get a full understanding of where that is, because it's just going to be a lot of work to get it all put together in a cohesive manner.
No, I think that's fair. I mean, I think just and again, I am not casting blame in any way, shape, or form, because I didn't ask, and we didn't have a discussion about us being part of that, because I guess I thought that, I don't know, maybe I thought that August was longer than it is. I'm not really sure. We've never been in this position before. So I just, feel like, we're all kind of flying blind a little bit. But anything that you can give us, I think will be helpful in allowing us to get our heads around what is a huge decision in a little bit more of a reasonable way. So it doesn't have to be pretty, but I appreciate anything you can do to kind of keep us in the loop on the work that's going on in those.
Absolutely. And Stacy, you did mention that to me, and I think it might have been the second conversation we had, is this is actually, tomorrow will be at the end of my 3rd week. So it's really been a fast-paced baptism by fire to the district. And I've met with so many different people and getting a sense of trying to assimilate all of that as well. So I do appreciate your desire to know as much as possible, and we'll get at least some summary of where the consensus is leaning as we exit our meetings tomorrow and then potentially into early next week.
Stacy, could I say something?
Go ahead.
So Susan, thank you. And Peter, I mean, I know this is so hard, and I have to be honest, when you first announced these, I actually thought about asking a school committee member could be on each of the subcommittees, but I didn't, because I just wanted to give you that breathing room. And I know, especially at the time, and it was only a few weeks ago, I think it was just, everything was so up in the air. It just would have added pressure to have us there maybe. But I also don't want to give you homework and ask you to come up with a summary at a point when it's sort of premature and feel like you're going to have to document this on paper. I'm wondering, so you have one more subcommittee meeting with each of the subcommittees? Each of them has one more meeting, or is the last one tomorrow, or has been this week?
Right now, tomorrow is our whole group discussion, and then we're going to sort of put those on hold so that we can get some drafts developed. And then we may end up meeting with that committee again. I just haven't I have not asked the teams to set up additional meetings until we have more to share, if we feel like we need more input from the smaller subcommittees at that point.
Well, what I was going to suggest is this, because it's a lot of information. If you choose to have that one last meeting, that might be a good opportunity to kind of divide us up, and then in a more intimate setting, each of us can kind of try to, I think, assimilate what's happening in the planning process. No presentation, no formal anything, just like join that last meeting and hear where things are at and the rationale that's sort of being worked on. Because, you know, at the end of the day, Dawn and Lisa are right. We're going to have to own this at some level. And more importantly, we're going to have to endorse it and pay for it, if you will. You know, so I do worry about not having visibility into it and having it sooner and having to make those decisions. But I think also just for us, there's a little bit of planning and communications planning around this too. So if there's a way, without giving you that homework, if there are meetings next week and we can figure out who makes the most sense, it might be worth just sort of having one person be, you know, whatever, one of each of us be on one of those subcommittees at some level.
And it's possible that we would be able to do the large group discussion rather than the separate subcommittees at that point. So let me talk with the team tomorrow when we have our 9 to 11 meeting, and we can narrow that down a little bit.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Cynthia?
Thank you. You're on mute. Cynthia, you're on mute.
Sorry, thanks. Thank you for all the work that you've been doing on this. I know it's been a lot. The third week, Susan. I'm curious about whether, with the guidance, I know it just came out last night, but I wonder whether about transportation, and whether in the next phase survey you have something about transportation. There were people in our the breakout groups that we were in on the MASC call regarding reopening, where one community said that 75% of their population was not going to be doing busing. So I think that was a huge shift for them from what it had been previously. So I feel like that will really help to inform, you know, how many students will actually need to put on the bus before we do things like trying to figure out different policies around busing. I also was wondering whether there was any thought or discussion about the phased approach that the MTA had put out. And I think, Catherine, you sent us a whole article about that, and whether that has factored into any sort of phased approach with younger students and all the way up. And then the last was just talking about how ESY has been doing for the last 3 weeks, and whether that's some indication of how we can support our, you know, high needs population here. So those are my 3 questions, and I can repeat any of them if you need me to.
Sure. So transportation, as I mentioned, my ideal preference is that I'll get that survey done tomorrow. I did share it with some of our team just to review if there was something they wanted to add to it. So my goal is it would be no later than Monday, but I'm hoping to get it out tomorrow with the results. And it's going to show that 64% of parents on that survey at a snapshot in time did indicate that they would be not transporting their students by bus or be able to transport them themselves. The worry I have with that is, as things start to ebb and flow, could they change their mind? So yes, a question on the survey that we have for tomorrow, Keith is very anxious to get more specific about who the people are and what the names would be, so that we can sort of narrow down who is actually taking transportation at this time with what they know. because at least that way it helps him in the planning process, because you're right, the smaller numbers absolutely help us because the restrictions on getting students back on the bus is significant. And some of the guidance that came out last night that if Keith wants to add on to, it would think it would help because it indicated that parents, children in the same family could sit together on one bench.
Mhm.
But as Keith, who's the expert on this, because I haven't measured the buses, he informed me that that's not really going to help us because that 3-foot barrier when you have 2 kids doesn't give you the 3 foot to the diagonal
Exactly.
seats and all that. So it
Right.
wasn't really anything helpful that can really lighten up those restrictions for us. But I absolutely think that the more we have a definitive amount of parents that are opting out of transportation will definitely play into that model that we can put forward.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned ESY, but there was something else before that that I.
Oh, the MTA, they had come out
Yes, thank you.
with some guidance talking about, phasing a phased approach of bringing in younger students and then moving up.
And that is definitely some of the discussion points that we've been having,
Okay.
because given that we know developmentally the younger grades are benefiting that much more from in-person, not that all students can, but it significantly does show that younger students have more struggles with remote learning as in total. So with that in thinking, we do want to try to prioritize getting our younger students in, as I mentioned, in person as much as possible, with that starting earlier on. And then that can guide us bringing back the older students as well, so there will be there likely will, as we finalize this, some staggering of the start times, but there's a twofold purpose to that. Our older students will more than likely be in a hybrid model for a good portion of the year. And that blended model is going to require some very specific training for our teachers and for our students, because it's not going to be the remote learning model that we knew of the past. This is going to be a very strategic, synchronous type of learning process, which requires a much more structured approach. So ideally, we would be trying to phase in our older students that are going to be, even though they're hybrid, that they would potentially have some remote time all together to learn the expectations, the training, the strategies, also to try to embed some social emotional supports, because we know we're coming back with some trauma sensitive needs. And we talked about adding some adjustment counselor supports within that, so that there likely is going to be a small window of remote learning, very short term, which is what I consider a phased in approach, in order to get them back in a more effective manner, so that we have similar expectations for the hybrid blend of the balance of remote and in person.
Mm-hmm. And the last was just about ESY.
And ESY, as you know, I sent out some information last week. Overall, we've had some really positive learning models in place. I've been over there this week and last week. The students are happy to be working in person. Also, we've done that was some of Dan McLeod's work to try to embed some of that hybrid thinking. So he had set up with the teachers some of that hybrid model, if you will. Some of our students are remoting in person to the staff or into the class already. And that model has been working. So as much as it was for me when I walked in on July 6th, not knowing that we had in-person ESY, that brought my anxiety level up, just given where we are as a state and just in our pandemic planning. But it's really given us some real food for thought as to what we can do differently in the fall and what's been effective. And I think that it's on a smaller scale. It's been a very useful model. And Peter, if you want to add anything more to that, but I've been very happy to see the results that have been taking place.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's been great that we've had that small group of kids to, both service in person. And I think the students and the families and the staff have loved the opportunity to work with them in person. And it's given us an opportunity to, in a very small scale, implement some of the instruction as well as procedures that are going to really keep us safe.
Thank you.
Okay, Dawn?
Okay, there were 2 issues that I wanted to bring up. One is, I think even at our last meeting 2 weeks ago, I heard something about altering the calendar and when we start school. And I think that's what I'm hearing again. And it might be in relation to this phase in, and I'm concerned about it. And here's why. I think that what we saw today was the Mass Teachers Association lobbying the commissioner for the 10-day phased in approach. Right now, we are scheduled to start on September 1st. If we were to delay, stall out, add in 10 days, that's September 15th. One of the things that the pandemic hitting on March 15th or 13th, around mid-March, gave our schools and our teachers, at least at the K through 8 level, the opportunity to develop a rapport with their students for the first 2/3 of the year. And I am very wary of signing off on pushing back when we start school, because I do think that many experts agree that we may hit another surge, whether it's October, November, December. I'm not sure who has the crystal ball. But the point is, if it's October and we don't get these kids in until September 15th and they're on a hybrid model, every day is critical to developing that rapport. We hear that among many of our teachers and our families. I am concerned about a phased-in approach. I also am aware that some other school districts are even going so far as to trade personal days to do some of this PD in late August. There are school districts where the professional development is happening during the week of August 24th, and then they're staying on track to open on September 1st. And so that is a part I am very concerned about. The second part is I have heard our youngest learners struggled the most. I've heard prioritizing getting the younger students back in. We're talking about Holliston Public Schools, and what we don't know, because we didn't assess these kids, we didn't take tests, we don't know. We don't know who needs the most remediation. We might find when we do assess in September that our middle school and high school students are woefully behind as well. Maybe as much, maybe more. We don't know that. So I guess what I'm trying to understand is the statements that we're going to prioritize getting the younger students in, or the younger learners struggled the most. Is that from some type of anecdotal survey where parents provided that information? Is that specific to Holliston because there's some type of assessment that's occurred? So those are two things that I am raising concerns about.
Understand your concerns. I think we all have concerns about what's best for all students. And when I was speaking to the learning styles, research has shown that the remote learning on younger students has shown less effective modeling and a lot more parent input. So we also have an opportunity here with the community to support our parents. We know people are getting that to work. So all of those things do take place in our considerations as well. And we absolutely need to be equitable as to the needs of our older students. So we've had a lot of talk about that. And one thing that I am very passionate about in my thinking, and the team has been advocating as well, is that what we don't want, because we're hearing this, there are districts that are putting together a full-blown remote learning model that they're planning on doing district-wide, or sometimes for the old. We are adamantly moving that we do not want our older learners or any of our learners, unless by choice for obvious needs, medical needs and so forth, if parents make that choice, that is an option that they would have the ability to do so. But we do see how important it is for all of our learners, our older learners, even if they are able to access material and learn their academic skills in an online learning fashion, these social emotional pieces are just as important to us. So that is why we are strongly advocating that all students will have the ability to have some in-person teaching. We just are not going to be able to do all students pre-K to 12 with a 6-foot model in place for safety reasons. And the other piece to that is we've been asked, this is also part of the guidance and medical advice. There is the research has been coming out, and as I mentioned, that parabola document that's going to be coming out publicly. There is all the research that's coming out from other countries. The cohorts have been divided up from pre-K through about 4th grade. When we get from 10-year-olds on up through high school, they compare their safety needs to adult learners, adults in society as far as the coronavirus. So we are also trying to, with the elementary model, there's a much more ability to keep the cohorts contained and keep children safe. When you get into the upper levels and you have large numbers of students in place, even if we do the 6 feet distancing, we open ourselves up to the possibility that they have much more exposure because they're moving from class to class. So all of that factors into what model can we put in place to keep our students physically safe, emotionally safe, provide equity for the needs of those learners. And yes, there are definitely students that we are prioritizing needs-wise that we know and are going to be doing more assessment on to determine the regression factor, because we have to prioritize the students that have not been successful and have not academically regressed, and those students will be given preference, and we're trying to blend that into them getting more in-person learning. So not everybody's going to get the same amount, because that would be equality. We're looking for equity with trying to prioritize the needs of all students, but that doesn't mean it's going to be exactly the same for everybody. And I wish I had a better way to have a crystal ball and try to make it happen. And that is our goal long-term, is to try to, and that's why Peter talked about that continuum. As we start to see success with the safety needs of our students, sanitizing every night, and the more we move our students, Keith can talk to you about how is the custodial staff and our office staff, how are they going to get all of these rooms sanitized as we have more and more students, and then if we change the cohort. So all of this is embedded in that thinking, and it's not an unwillingness and a strong effort. We know the importance of all of our students getting that in-person modeling, and that is why we didn't release things that we are unable to do now because of the new things that have come out. And that's why we want to give parents the most accurate information as possible. But I do hear your concerns.
Dawn, I'm going to let you take that information, and I'm going to have Anne Louise. She had some questions or thoughts. So if you have a question afterwards, I'll call you after Anne Louise. Okay.
Yeah, well, I think it's related to that. I guess, let me just back up a little bit. So, so as you all know, kids are heading off to college. And what's interesting to me about how universities are handling this is that they are some universities have chosen to go full remote. Some are bringing the kids back. But what they're creating are, I'm going to call them social cohorts in these dorms. That was scary. Whose dog is that?
Susan's dog.
Susan's dog. I'm not coming to your house. So, and these are just anecdotes, 2 examples. This is an impossible Rubik's Cube, but my middle child is going back to Holy Cross. Worcester is a city. It's going to be a tough city to manage this in, especially as winter comes and people are enclosed indoors. And 3 of her 4 classes are going to be remote, but they're bringing the kids back to campus. My other daughter, instead of being here on August 5th and 6th, so I haven't quite figured out, I'm actually delighted we can Zoom, but haven't quite figured this out because we'll be driving to Indiana, and on the 5th I'll be moving her in, and the 6th, I don't know, driving back. But it's the same sort of thing. They're moving the kids into the dorms. Now, they are going to have in-person classes, but they're prioritizing labs, they're prioritizing language instruction and certain things that physically require in-person work, and then the kids are going to be taking classes from their dorms. So I don't have a better phrase other than to describe it as social cohorts. What concerns me is that a statement like, how did you say it, Susan? And I know there was nothing intended by this, but that, our youngest learners struggle the most. I think it's relative to the developmental challenges of their particular age, right? So they have extreme developmental challenges being younger that are different than those of students who are older. I am hugely sensitive to the challenge for parents and, trying to teach your 7-year-old while you are working over here, it's a whole lot harder than it is if you have a middle or high school student. But that assumes the middle school student and the high school student is motivated enough or able to self-direct themselves. And that's not always true. Even the most motivated kids in a socially isolated environment struggle with that at times, and they don't always turn their Zoom on or what have you. So I worry about the social isolation for the older children, which is less academic, but it will impede their academics. And I know you've thought all this through. I know that. So it's not an easy challenge. But I do wonder if at the high school and the middle school, where ordinarily they're changing classes, maybe we treat it much the way the universities are doing it, where we're bringing them in, they're getting contact with their teachers, but we create social cohorts where, frankly, they're not moving classes and they're still Zooming, maybe as social cohorts from within the classroom, but at least they're seeing other students, at least they're seeing their teachers. It's kind of like being in homeroom all day, if you want to put it that way. And then maybe the cohort changes slightly the following week or something, I don't know, but at least it would be the same group, same space, and maybe not necessarily the same class every period because they're Zooming from within a particular social, particular room that's their room. I don't have a good answer. I just do share Dawn's concern because I watched it. I watched it happen real time. I am in contact with many, many parents of students at the middle and high school level in particular. I've heard this. They reach out to me, and I don't think it's as simple as just saying because they're older, they don't struggle with this. And I know that's not what you're saying, but I think I know it's not what you're saying, but I do worry about it. And I guess that brings me back to the last point, which is the start date and maximizing the amount of space that we're trying to, physical space that we have at our disposal. The earlier we start, the more we will be able to take advantage of outdoor space. And I really do think that that is something we need to consider because this disease is going to spread faster in enclosed spaces if and when, that happens. And to the degree that we keep people outdoors or what have you, I think that's something to consider. And once again, I want to make sure that we're exploring using some of our larger spaces that are not typically academic spaces, like the field house, the gym, splitting them up into classroom spaces. They're noisy. I know that it's not perfect, but it's better than pure remote. So.
And that's absolutely the discussion we have, because we do not want students to only have a remote option. That's not sufficient. We really agree with you that the social interactions, it is more challenging at the high school than the middle school. We have some better ideas in place of how we can keep those cohorts sustained, the schedule challenges of that. So that's where the older they get with the electives and different offerings, it makes it more challenging to keep the cohorts, as you're talking about, the social cohorts, to give them sufficient choices in academics. So we're trying to balance all of that. And I do think the part that's really adds to the challenge is that we are having expectations for teachers that is very new. It's not, they didn't get a lot of training going into remote learning before. We're looking for a more synchronous type of learning. And in order to do that effectively and give students optimal learning opportunities in a hybrid and or in-person blended model, then we really need to make sure that the teachers have the tools that they need to be successful. And as you know, we have to bargain some of that as well, because teachers have to have a voice in that process. It is part of our collective bargaining agreements. And we have put out to ask for dates for that, but that's also impacting timelines and things. In order to front load some of that training, we have to bargain any changes to the teachers as well.
Yes, thank you. I know.
Peter, I know you wanted to interject there as well.
Yeah, Anne-Louise, I definitely appreciate some of that creativity around cohorts, at the high school and middle school level. It's certainly, we want to try to replicate a more typical experience best we can, and we'll be considering those things that you're talking about too, because if the mixing of classes and such is not working, we'll be prepared to pivot, and that doesn't mean exclusively remote at home, but there are things that you're considering. As far as we want to get kids into school as soon as possible, and Linda Darling-Hammond, who's one of the preeminent voices in education, put out an article just the other day about lessons learned from other nations, and what she iterated very, very clearly, just like we're seeing in reopening, not in schools, but in other things in Texas and Arizona and Florida. We have to do this as wisely as possible, or we'll pay for it later. And so, we're gonna strike that balance. If, just like we've been reiterating all spring and summer, we want kids in person. We want kids back as soon as possible. But the decisions we're trying to make, and you'll obviously be the arbiters of those, are with the intention of getting the very most out of our schools next year in this extraordinary time. So we're trying to strike that balance. Everything that you mentioned is really helpful. Believe us, we're like the iterations that we are coming forward with, are like dizzying, and it's important. But again, when we're doing that, we're not in any way, we believe wholeheartedly that we need to provide the very best experience for middle school and high school kids. We know that remote learning only was, so effective for those kids, and we need to do our very best to do everything we can for them. And we want to, look at all the nuances of both these different models and different developmental levels to come up with a plan that is the very best it can be, and that, again, can nimbly flex as things hopefully get better or get worse, or as we assess things and see things are working for some and not for others. So that's the whole dance that we're trying to run. And if we gave you a plan 2 weeks ago, it was published, okay, it would have been 3 foot. We spent those 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks of Susan being here, thinking about how do we make this 3 foot model work, because that's what the state would, and so it is what it is. But
thank you,
Catherine.
So it occurs to me that as I'm hearing everybody speak, I'm going, oh yes, I want to know about that. Oh yes, I want to know about that. And so I feel like a lot of what the discussion we're having right now actually goes back to wanting the plans, right? So we're all asking these questions that we're wondering about, that you've already been talking about, but we're still wondering about. And so what I'm hearing is a lot of wanting the details, wanting to know. And I think, when you say, Dr. Patel, you were talking about the nuances, you're talking about things that other towns aren't even talking about yet. And I'm thinking, that's awesome. What are they? I want to know. And when, you're talking about, well, maybe a phased in model, what does that mean? I want to know. And I feel like that's a lot of the conversation that we're all agreeing with and nodding with is that we want to know. And so I'm kind of going back to what Lisa was saying before about, recognizing, of course, that it's difficult to get these plans out quickly. That's where a lot of our anxiety is coming from. I think it was really helpful when you said that other towns who have already put out their models, they don't have to go back and change them. And so I hear that, and I hadn't even really thought about that. Like, I want to be Lexington. I want to have had our plan months ago, but of course, no, now they have to change them. Everything's changing. And I have to say, I was at the town meeting the other night, and we were all 6 feet apart. And even that, I was kind of like, don't touch anyone, don't touch anyone, don't touch anyone. Like, even that was a little too close. So I'm thinking, like, 3 feet, you can, like, some people's arms are 3 feet. Like, that's too close. It really is. So
come in for a hug.
Yeah, right. Like, a little too close. So I do have a question about, like, you talked about the parent forum and the staff forum. Is that more to get input, or is that more just to deliver information? Would we be making changes to the plan based on information gathered at those meetings, or is that a delivery method?
I would say it's a combination of both, because at that point, we should be able to give strong details about the plan that's going to take place. And in that process, want parent questions to come to us. And even if there's concerns that we haven't thought of related to the direction we're going, because we should be able, by then we're going to be having a strong ability to share the options without all the specific details on paper, but they'll get a good sense of that. And that would be a time for them to, if there's something we didn't think about that we can tweak before we finalize the portion of the plans that are going into DESE, we want to have that opportunity to do so. So we're thinking this as each day the revision is going to happen with any more information we can get related to that. And I can promise you that we will get some more information from DESE as well as we plan on Tuesday and Wednesday. That is also going to potentially move us a little bit But we have to cement these plans. We're running out of time. I mean, he gave us a very tight timeline from July 31st to the 10th is not a lot of time, especially when, as I mentioned, we got additional guidance last night that also told us some things that we thought we could do. For example, study carols and things, plexiglass. People started thinking, oh, isn't it great if we could put plexiglass and have kids have physical distance, well, the wall distance, but they can still see each other. And now we're hearing, as of last night, you may not be able to do that because, so every time we think we've got a solution, we get a wrench in the planning. And then, so I'm glad in some sense that we didn't tell parents, okay, we're going to do in-person learning at 3 feet. And then just say, scratch that. And parents started planning their whole future because we don't want them to plan something that's not realistic. And I as a parent, as much as I know, thankfully my children are adults now and I don't have to think of it. It's very scary times, but to be able to give them accurate information so that we don't make them go through hoops of things that aren't happening is really our goal as well. And in fairness to all families that are going through this process with us.
Sure. So will the parents and staff, will they get the plan before that night? Will they be able to see it beforehand? Or will that be their first exposure to it?
I am hopeful that we will have the crux of the plan in place. Maybe they wouldn't have the whole thing, but they would have the models and that portion of it to at least have shared it out prior to, so they can have some reference points as they're talking with us.
Okay. I was just thinking that it would be easier for parents to ask well-formed questions if they're not reading it for the first time that night. They have some time to think about it and then come with their questions.
Yeah, and I think the biggest part is going to be what the model, the type of model at each grade level is really the part I think is the most important for parents to understand, because that relates to so many things that they have to plan as well.
And if the parents can't make it to either one of those forums, will they have a way to give feedback?
You mean if they got the draft of that potential plan? Yeah, I would say that sooner than later after that night would be critical that we get that information shortly thereafter. So yes.
Okay.
So I would actually like to propose, and Catherine, this isn't that I don't disagree with you, but I almost wonder if we should hold a couple of mini forums, if you will, sort of like the way we've done office hours before. So Susan, in the past, the school committee has held office hours, like before town meeting, or if there's been something, percolating in the community about a particular school issue. So I'm wondering, so we used to do, when you could do it in person, we would hold office hours at a coffee shop on a Saturday morning. But then we would also hold office hours that same week during the week in the evening, just to sort of at least be more available, if you will, to the different schedules of people. So I know I'm asking a lot. So now I'm asking for the weekend, and I know the timing is crazy short. I'm available to sit with you on a Saturday morning, if you so wish, but I do wonder if we should offer more than one time.
I certainly appreciate that thinking and understand where you're coming from in other things that I've done in the past. I don't want to overpromise right now. I really want my team to have input, because I don't want to be speaking for them, because my hope was that some of the leadership that has been involved and maybe the parent reps, that I would want them to come and be able to talk about this discussion as well. So I just don't want to tie people's schedules up without knowing their availability, because I would want to replicate whatever is happening at the nighttime group, but ideally you'd have the same players there to answer some of those questions. So if you could give me till tomorrow to speak with the team. Peter, I think you're taking notes, copious notes there. So if you could do that for me, and we can ask them about their ability to do so under that short time frame.
Great, thank you. All right, who else had their hand up? Because I'm not trying to ignore anyone. Anyone else have their hand up? Okay, Keith, did you want to share any information that you've learned about? You may not want to, and you can tell me no to go scratch, but do you want to share anything?
Oh, what was that? I'm sorry. No, I mean, the only thing, is the pieces that, whether it be for transportation or facilities, they're slightly more complicated. They're not as, I don't think it's anything that's earth shattering or anything that wasn't expected. necessarily, but the one thing that was, I'll say, inconsistent or whatever is that they took the 3-foot guideline and applied that to the bus. It allows us to bring 25 children on a bus, but it's still going to be at 3 feet. So with windows open, hopefully that's going to work. So that's probably the biggest thing. But the need for staffing and whether it be a monitor on a bus, I'll just do one quick story. So picture yourself, you're a child getting onto a bus. You're going to get onto the bus. If you don't have a mask, there has to be an adult that tells you, nope, you need a mask on. We're going to need to make sure there's masks available for that child as well. Then you get on the bus and you're going to go to your assigned seat. So somebody's going to have to know what that assigned seat is, which is why when people say, do you really need a monitor? Yeah, we do. I mean, I can't have the bus driver trying to worry about things such as masks and which seat they're in. And by the way, stay in that seat. Don't go and sit next to your best friend who you just met, 2 days ago, that sort of thing. So that's going to be a big staffing issue there. Cleaning the buses was I think, I'll say a lot more onerous than I thought it was going to end up being. So, it's going to put possibly some cramps or crimps in the middle bus run for the middle school and high school. So there's a lot of things that are doing that we're going to have to really work through that, I'm not going to have an answer for in the space of an hour type of thing. That being said, the news could have been worse. They could have said 6 feet on a bus and I'm taking 11 kids or 12 kids. So it could have been much worse. But with 25, I believe, both based on the survey that was run already, plus our looking at the data after rolling kids forward for promoting students to another grade for the year. I think even if all K to 6 greater than 2 miles took transportation, I believe we can get them all there. Any above that, I'm not so sure. So, but that's about it. So.
Sorry, Dawn?
When do we expect to send out bus pass information? Do we know that yet, guys?
Susan and I are going to firm up what the next survey is going to be and whether it's a specific thing. The first thing we have to do is, because the seats are going to be so limited, things that we've done in the past, such as having a different, getting picked up in one spot and then dropped off in another can't happen. Just can't. We're not going to have the space. So you're going to get to pick one spot, and whether it's at your childcare place or your home, it's going to be both pick up and drop off. There won't be taking of secondary buses, regardless of custody situations. We can't accommodate that, and it's just not going to be possible. I don't know if, again, the number of available seats for non-mandated transportation. So it's going to be getting a good feel for because normally we kind of count all mandated transportation and then go from there. I don't want to make that assumption, because I count all mandated transportation. I may end up with no available seats to be able to, offer for a fee. So we really have to do this in 2 parts. So it's going to be doing the mandated transportation first, then the bus, then secondarily doing the bus pass children. So.
And by unmandated, you mean grades 7 through 12 that don't, by law, don't require us to transport them.
And grades K to 6 greater than 2 miles, less than 2 miles, excuse me. So.
Stacey, you're muted.
Sorry. So the next part of our agenda, which is sort of adjacent to this, was an update on the administrative retreat. Was there anything else, Susan or Peter, that you wanted to add about next week?
No, I think we have a lofty task ahead of us, so we know that that's going to be the bulk of the work. But Peter has talked about embedding, as we think of the reopening plans, we're still looking back to our district goals that and the planning process that goes through 2022, isn't it, Peter? And we want to make sure that we don't lose sight of the work that had been happening over the last few years, and how does that apply in this different model of education that we're moving forward. But those goals are important. Certainly the social emotional piece is where that's embedded in all of the district plans and the school improvement plans. That's where we feel the social justice, equity, and dealing with the anti-racial thinking is going to be falling under the header of social emotional learning. And that's why we're trying to embed that. Our speaker is coming for about an hour and a half. I would invite you, as I mentioned, to that 45-minute opening, and I'll send the invitation out if you could let us know if you're able to come. We just want you to see that we really take this seriously. As much as we know the lofty task we have ahead of us, we don't want to lose sight of the other important things that need to happen for the fall as well.
No, that's great, and that's appreciated, and I look forward to that. And Louise?
Sorry. I just wanted to commend you for making, all of you, Peter, Susan, et cetera, making social justice a priority in the agenda for your offsite, because in the context of this enormous challenge of reopening, it would have been easy to not have done that. And I really want to commend you for doing it, because I think you're right. It's almost impossible to tease it apart and not acknowledge that equity and social justice issues are very much a part of this challenge, actually. So thank you for making that a priority.
Okay.
Appreciate
All
that.
right. Any other questions before we move on? We have 2 votes to take, and then we are going to adjourn into executive session. All right, I'm going to take that as a no. So the first, yeah, Cynthia?
Sorry, I just was going to say, do we want to talk a little bit more about the MASC reopening discussion? Or, I mean, I don't know when you wanted to do that. Did you want to do that now?
Yeah, so you and Lisa and Dawn attended.
Yes.
Do you have anything to share?
Yes. I actually,
go ahead.
I'll just get started, and Dawn and Lisa just jump in wherever. I also was, there was one comment they made we started out in a large group. There was 275 people in there as of 6:10. And so that was a lot of people that were coming from school committees to talk about this plan, or all of the plans, I should say. And one of the things that was brought up was that Ashland had posted on their Facebook page that they had all the school committee members, I guess some other administrators, do like a field trip where they all took the bus wearing their masks and, did the social distancing of walking into the school and sitting at desks, and they recorded that whole thing and showed that. I didn't actually see it yet because I was on the call prior to this meeting. So, but I thought that was really interesting, and I would love if we would be able to do something like that, not right now, but when we have like the actual plan, so we can actually see it. Not that I have to be the person that goes and does that, but whatever. But I thought it was really cool that they did that, and there wasn't really a lot of discussion about it, but I thought it was a great idea. In one of the breakouts that we discussed, they talked about one talked about they were hired a consultant to help them from Leading Learners Institute. That they hired a consultant to help them with this process. I don't know if that was something that you knew anything about. I have never heard that name before. There was a lot of discussion about trying to get information to parents, even if that is, here's what we're thinking. We don't have a set plan yet, but this is where we're at, so that they can start wrapping their heads around how flexible they're going to need to be, that we all need to be as we work into this process. Let's see. There were some people that said that they released their plans earlier, and then again, with that new guidance, had to kind of revamp everything. So there was sort of this push and pull of, we're feeling like we were so ahead of the 8 ball, and now we have to go back and redo everything. So that was some discussion. One of the things that Lincoln Sudbury talked about was that they held a public forum, and they asked people to bring in questions ahead of time, or to even email them ahead of time, so they could actually spend time answering them during the forum. So I thought that was a good idea. Maybe that's something we could consider doing here as we move towards looking to have a forum. And then there was some focus on discussing how our district is going to work with our high needs populations, and how we're going to assess those kids as we come in. So that was like what my breakout room focused on. So I don't know, Dawn and Lisa, whether you wanted to share more about what you guys discussed.
Dawn, do you want to go first?
I've worked in already some of the things that I had taken note of, but I did think that was very interesting with Ashlyn having a video of and kind of showing what it would look like and having administration and school committee participate in that.
I think what Ashlyn did is interesting, and I know that you're not asking for it today, but I would caution it because Natick, there was a picture in one of the newspapers, and I just was sharing with Keith earlier that they showed the picture of the desks, 4 desks, all facing each other with the partitions. And my first reaction was like, what is that? Even with plexiglass. You know, so I just think we've got to be careful about when we post pictures and whatnot. And I know you weren't suggesting otherwise. But I just want to reiterate because I know that we're all hearing, whether it's on Facebook or conversations with friends, that people feel like, why haven't we seen anything? Why haven't we seen a plan? And we just can't reiterate enough. So much has changed that if we say something happens today, it is very likely going to change by Tuesday. So we got to keep that in mind. Lisa?
Yeah, and there was talk about that at the diplomatic comments about that at this MASC discussion. But there's definitely a feeling that, you know, we know the state's doing the best they can, but it's very hard for us to digest, you know, another 50-page document, I think, was the transportation summary that we got, the guidelines from the state last night at 10 p.m. I can't imagine Keith's reaction. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall when that came through. But, you know, I do think that people are going to have to understand that everyone's doing the best they can, and we can only work with the information that we have. So, you know, I think it is important to keep that in mind. And there was talk about that, certainly, at this discussion. The only other thing I wanted to bring up that I haven't already is there was a really interesting, this is what happens when you get all sorts of random people serving on school committees. There was a mathematician who I think he teaches at Williams College, so way out in the Berkshires, but he's on the local school committee. And he showed us a diagram in our breakout room of this hexagonal desk arrangement, where, you know, instead of having the squares, you can get, you know, better distancing with triangles. So he gave us all his email, and I was going to follow up and just get the diagram to send to you guys for fun. But it's really interesting that I think, you know, there are so many people thinking about this from so many different perspectives. And I hope that, you know, people watching this meeting and parents will understand that everybody here is taking in all the information as quickly as we can and processing it as quickly as we can in the hopes of making the best decisions that we can. So that's it from the conference, though.
And I would also, you know, Catherine brought this up a little bit earlier, and this is true too, and we haven't talked about this as much. And we also need to take into consideration our teachers and staff and administrators. So Catherine's right. I attended town meeting on Monday night as well. And actually, I was concerned that I was making a mistake by going. And I'm not throwing people under the bus, but there were several people who did not attend town meeting because they didn't feel safe. And so I just want people to keep in mind that everybody's at a different place right now. So if I choose to sit in that town hall for 3 hours with the mask on, you know, we need to consider the teachers and the students as well. And Catherine's right. It was a little scary to be sitting there and thinking, am I in the right spot or not? So we need to be mindful of that. And I absolutely would like to be able to either sit in or have a conversation with the teachers as well, because I think their voices need to be heard. And I just don't want to lose sight of their voice either. All right. Oh, Susan, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to agree with all of that. I really think, I can only speak from my perspective. I think everybody in this group has children, or some of us have raised children, and mine are 26, 26, 28, and 33. So from the lens of a teacher and the lens of a parent, I hear all of your concerns, and that's why we have rethought our plans over and over and revised already so many times, which is why we haven't gotten them all onto paper. And I'm certainly passionate about doing what's best for children, all children. And that best is going to look differently by grade level, but we have to consider the needs of all children in our lenses. And I agree with the assessment piece. We have to make sure that when students come back, even in the best laid plans, there are going to be individual differences of students that we also need to consider. And certain individuals might also need to be changed into the dynamic of what their plan might look like. It's going to limit our options as to how many kids with the in-person models can happen, but we have to look at case-by-case basis as well. And there are going to be some kids that show significant regression that we will have to help to support them with.
And with that, I'd like to move forward and let's take these votes. Dr. Kuska sent us all memos. We need to appoint someone to both the Accept and Tech Collaboratives. So before I ask for a motion to appoint Dr. Kuska as our person for both Accept and Tech, are there any questions? Susan, did you want to share any more information about it?
No, I was asked to come to a meeting tomorrow, and I said, I don't think I've been approved to attend yet, so I don't think you want me to sit in on that meeting because they had to have a board meeting. So I will not be attending the meeting tomorrow, which actually overlaps our meeting at 10 o'clock, so we're meeting at 9 to 11, so that worked out just fine, but that's what reminded me that it's important that we get someone on those boards so I can keep you abreast of what's going on through the collaboratives as well.
Great. Are there any questions? Is there a motion to appoint Dr. Susan Kuska to the Accept Collaborative?
Moved by Andy.
Seconded by Anne Louise.
Moved by Andy, seconded by Anne Louise. All in favor? Sorry, you all moved. Ms. Koshin?
Yes.
Ms. Savard?
Yes.
Mrs. Listevnik?
Yes.
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Ms. Naborski?
Yes.
Ms. Hanstead?
Yes.
Mrs. Raffi? Yes. Are there any questions about appointing Dr. Kuska to the Tech Collaborative? Okay, I will accept a motion to appoint Dr. Susan Kuska to the Tech Collaborative.
Moved by Lisa.
Seconded by Cynthia.
Moved by Lisa, seconded by Cynthia. All in favor? Ms. Koshin?
Yes.
Ms. Savard?
Yes.
Mrs. Listevnik?
Yes.
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Ms. Naborski?
Yes.
Ms. Hanstead?
Yes.
Mrs. Raffi? Yes. Congratulations, Susan. You now get to attend more meetings. Thank you. Thank you. All right. As an item of information, I have signed some warrants this evening. The first is school bill warrant in the amount of $53,898.76. The second is a school bill warrant in the amount of $58,167.86. A school bill warrant in the amount of $60,760.34. A school bill warrant in the amount of $793,203.07. Keith, the high school one, is that a student activities account?
Yes, it's a replenishment.
Okay. That was in the amount of $32,183. And the last one is, where'd it go? $67,189.11. that was a school bill warrant as well. Those have all been signed, and they will make their way to town hall tomorrow. All right, so our next meeting date, we are talking about, I gotta look at August 5th, which is Wednesday, August 5th. And after tomorrow, I will send an email to you all about possible office hours / parent forums for school reopening plans once Susan and Peter talk to the rest of the team. But for right now, we will meet on Wednesday, August 5th. Is 7 o'clock what we're thinking, or 7?
Earlier? Can we do 6, or does that not work? Anybody? No? Andy says no?
Eloise?
I know August 5th is what we chose, but I may not be able to get on. I'm worried
You're
because
driving, that's right.
well, I'm not driving. That's the day we're moving. That's the day we're moving her in. I don't know what the evening brings, but if I had to guess something, so I'm just, and there's a lot on the agenda. Why did we pick a Wednesday?
No other time.
It was to discuss the new plan and then have the ability to give input before we have to discuss and vote on it on Thursday.
On Thursday.
Okay,
Yeah.
So that's what, I'm sorry, that was confusing earlier to me, but so are you saying you added a meeting for the 5th in addition to the 6th?
Yeah.
And when are we doing the organization? Like, I thought we had a meeting next week. Am I mistaken on that?
We don't right now.
But when you and I talked a little earlier, Stacy, this week, when you first called me, you were saying you were contemplating actually canceling tonight. We didn't because we needed executive session. As it turns out, we needed a whole meeting. But you had referenced having one next Thursday. So is there a reason we're not doing one next Thursday?
We won't have enough time. Well, I shouldn't say we. The administrators are not going to have enough time to give us the information that we want to be able to discuss, because they will have finished their meeting on Wednesday at whatever time Wednesday.
Yeah, no, I get that, but is that the only agenda item?
Yes.
So is it your intent to do the reorganization on the 5th?
The 6th.
No, the 6th.
It's supposed to be the first meeting after graduation. That's what I'm asking, because I may not be able to be there. So that's what I'm trying to get my head around here.
Would it be helpful to have a meeting next Thursday for purposes of reorganization? And then the
I
following.
won't be there. Sorry.
Okay. I think it's important for all 7 of us to be there, whether it's next week or the week after. If Cynthia can't be there, I would certainly wouldn't suggest it. And I kind of feel the same way about myself the following Thursday. And the truth is, I just don't know. I don't know if I can be there on Thursday. I will do my very best, but it's going to be a complicated day. I know that.
You mean Wednesday? Because Thursday was the posted meeting that we've already had on the calendar. I think you're talking about Wednesday.
Yeah, sorry. That's what
Why don't we just do the reorg on Thursday?
That's when we were going to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to say is I don't know what those 2 days bring. If I'm driving back from Indiana, super, I'll get on in the car. All right, well, we'll do the best that we can do. If I can't come, then I'll let you guys know. Okay, thank you.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn into executive session for which we will not return? The reason for executive session is strategy for collective bargaining with the HFT.
Moved by Cynthia.
Second by Dawn.
Moved by Cynthia, seconded by Dawn. Roll call vote. Ms. Koshin?
Yes.
Ms. Savard?
Yes.
Mrs. Listevnik?
Yes.
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Ms. Naborski?
Yes.
Ms. Hanstead?
Yes.
Mrs. Raffi. It is 8:58 p.m. This meeting is now adjourned. We are moving into executive session. Oh, Keith? No, everyone stay where you are. To the public, thank you all. Have a great night.